Okay, is this recording? All right. So I'm doing a little experiment here to work on my public speaking and trying out a method of, on my Mac laptop, I have QuickTime Player recording me over the webcam. And I'm going to record myself. So I'm just going to quickly just run through the whole story of my life. No, of course I'm not the whole story, but uh, just to make up a topic. So I thought I'd just talk about something I've been thinking about, which is sort of geography and history and how do the past and the future meet. I guess I was thinking about this because I was just in London, where I lived when I was little, and so it made me think about this. But so what I was thinking about, I've been mulling over, is that I realized that when I think about the past and the future, in a lot of ways I think about it very much shaped by the way I saw it when I was a 5-year-old boy. And by that I mean there are certain key images and frames and places that through which I see this and very much shape my thinking. So there's a couple of key images I want to kind of recollect, and these are vivid in my mind. I can picture them like they're photographs in front of me. And the first of them is, so when I was a little kid, I was growing up in England, and we lived in northwest London in a very ordinary place called Kenton. And I was kind of a rock hound, and I liked to pick up rocks wherever I went. And I spent a lot of happy hours rooting around in our back garden, which is this kind of clayey soil, some of it kind of reddish. They call it clay, not soil. But it's this notion of soil. There are just layers, and it just mingled all this stuff from millennia or generations. And I was mostly interested in rocks, looking for quartz, looking for flints, whatever. But I remember it did happen at least once, maybe more, that you might well come across something like a bottle or some kind of glass, Victorian maybe. And that, just something that happened, somebody who lived there threw it out. And it might happen, or you might hear of it happening nearby, that someone might find like a Roman coin. And again, cool, but understandable. I mean, after all, the road down the street, Kenton Road, I think may have been a Roman road, and not too far from Edgware Road, which was the original Roman road from Londinium to Wales, going northwest. And, the Romans were around, and that's just how it is. People, of course, they've lived here for millennia. They've always lived here, and they drop things, and you find them. And related, and so on a similar point, I remember there was this book that was one of my favorite books when I was a kid, and it was this lavishly little volume called something like The History of Middlesex County. And Middlesex County is a now defunct county that dates back or traces back to Anglo-Saxon times, in the 5th century onward Anglo-Saxon kingdom. So Middlesex was a territory in the middle, in between Wessex to the west, Essex, and Sussex. And I think it got absorbed by Essex long ago, but nonetheless, it kind of existed as a place name. And this was around until, I think, in 1965, it was largely absorbed into Greater London. But nonetheless, the name was still around, and we had this beautiful volume on the shelf. And this book, which I grew up looking at, was kind of the history of our area, going back to pre-Roman and Roman times. And here's a picture of the Roman road, and then artist depiction, and here's a picture of it is now, and with Tesco's on it, whatnot, a bus going by. And nothing seemed unusual about that to me. That just seemed like how things were. Wherever you live, there've always been people there. It's just layers all the way down. So that notion of kind of the soil, was just a crucial thing. I spent a lot of time poking around in that soil. But then I distinctly remember there was this totally different image that dropped on me at one point. And it was a TV ad for Bounty bars. Now, Bounty bars are English candy bar, I guess English and global, and it's chocolate and coconut. And so I distinctly remember these ads, and I've actually been able to find one, which is a bit newer, but it's in the same vein. And I'm going to play it to just give you an example of what this means in this distinct image. So let me see if this plays here.
New bounty is coconut, moist, tender coconut, covered with a smooth chocolatey coating. New bounty, moist, tender coconut gives you the taste of paradise.
So I remember seeing these ads and being a kind of awestruck and thinking, first of all, I like Bounty bars, taste good. I'd like more of those. And this Paradise place. Now, kids are literal by default. And so I just assumed that this place, Paradise, was another place like Kenton or Middlesex is a place. And I thought, that looks like quite a nice place. I'd like to go there. You can it's like brand new, there's space, it's sunny, no one, maybe you're exploring it, finding things, there, people running around in the sun and enjoying coconuts, that looks nice. Maybe I'd try going there sometime. So, and it was because I was the kind of kid who would tend to mull over things and not, say discuss them with anybody. It was actually a couple years, I think, before my parents or somebody disabused me of the idea that Paradise is an actual town somewhere. So that's what I thought for years, and still the image kind of sticks with me. And then, so you got these two images, and then some years later, around that time, we went on a family trip to the States. And this was, we went to the West Coast, mainly to Phoenix, where my father partly grew up, and then I think we went through LA, where my mother's cousin lives, and then up the West Coast towards Portland, where I was actually born just before going to London. I think we may actually have driven through Silicon Valley. We might have, which I'm told at that time, of course, it was just nothing but fruit groves. And anyway, what I remember thinking, among other things, is, actually this is a bit like Paradise. I mean, I know it's an actual place, but it's sunny all the time, and there's lots of space. There's kind of almost nobody here compared to, London or Heathrow. And you can do whatever you want, and you can, make up new spellings for words or pronounce things how you want, and, it's for adventurers, right? And this kind of struck me, and then we went back to London, and that image just parked with me. So these two sets of images became these kind of poles in my mind. These two places I've been in, and these two kind of geographies. And now, all these years later, in my declining years, I live in Silicon Valley, and which actually, again, in many ways, kind of resembles that Paradise in superficial ways. It is sunny all the time. There are palm trees and lots of space. People are kind of living in outer space. But now, of course, this is kind of a false dichotomy, because both places, London and the West Coast, and every place has history, and it has a future and opportunity. But nonetheless, there's some kind of spirit of a place, at least for you, in your experience of it. And for me, London is of course, the exemplum of historic and layered, kind of infinitely layered, layers all the way down, and infinitely represented, and self-represented, and self-studying, and self-aware. And the West Coast, of course, is distinctively forward-facing. Geographically, on the edge of the continent, I literally live a half mile from a massive earthquake fault that any day now may dump us in the Pacific and put us all the further on the edge, but on the Pacific Rim and so on. And as they say, it's where the West ends, in a sense. Before you hit the Pacific, you look out there and it's just ocean for half of the globe. And I do think these shape how people think, weather and so on. They don't control it, but they shape it, they inform it. And each are worthwhile perspectives. I think, of course, we want to know what has been done, what are people, what have people thought before. But we also want to know what might be done, what might we be, what might we do. And in my mind, at least, these two places and societies and cultures kind of exemplify those kind of poles. So anyway, this leads me to where I am now, which is I live here, but I sort of have this project or ambition of how can I live in both places in some way, whether mentally or even physically. I mean, maybe I can work out some patron to fly me back and forth and work in both places in some way. There are actually startups and some people that do live this way. I know some people that split their time, but anyway, so that's where I am now, and I thought I would mention that, and that being my project, along with maybe working on my public speaking a little bit. Anyway, thanks for listening, everyone, both of you, and talk to you next time.